Thanks for joining us on the show that dives into all things people, power, and politics. This, my friends, is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. The battle over Texas trying to redraw its congressional districts hitting a new level with one Democratic governor's office mocking President Trump by using some Trump-esque language. We're diving into that and talking to a PR expert about messaging. Plus, two well-known names to The Pulse are here to talk about what's really been a busy week in politics. The feds take over D.C. police, tariffs, and a whole lot more. S.E. Cupp and Mayor Ethan Baker of Troy are ready to roll. And the Fed holding interest rates steady, frustrating President Trump. But tariffs and President Trump's budget bill have caused a lot of uncertainty and some anxiety. A financial advisor is in Studio C with how all of this could affect us. So toss that phone aside and let's roll as we begin with the feds taking over the Washington, D.C. Police Department. At this hour, we've learned federal officers will be on the streets 24/7. The takeover was announced Monday as the president claims crime is rampant in the city, but D.C. crime stats show violent crime is at a 30-year low. There was also an about-face by Mayor Muriel Bowser. At first, she called it an authoritarian push, but now says it's a boost to public safety.
We certainly want to know what we're being measured against, and I think they regard it as a success to have more presence and to take more guns off the street, and we do too. That's what MPD works on every single day.
We think the Democrats will not do anything to stop crime, but we think the Republicans will do it almost unanimously. So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to pertain initially to D.C.
President Trump has the power to take over D.C. police for up to 30 days. Now, if he wants to extend that, he needs approval from Congress, and that could be tough if Democrats resist. Take you to the international front now, to the war in Ukraine, where the president and Russian President Vladimir Putin are getting ready to meet in Alaska. But one key figure will be missing: Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. You see, Putin wants Ukraine to give up certain territory that Zelensky says is a non-starter. And European allies say there needs to be a ceasefire before any talks. President Trump says he's not making any big predictions and has to feel out Putin's intentions, while Zelensky, well, he had this warning.
I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the streets.
Putin is bluffing. He's trying to put pressure on all fronts of the Ukrainian front ahead of the meeting in Alaska. Russia is trying to portray itself as capable of occupying the whole of Ukraine.
So what are we looking at here? Well, the meeting is set for Friday. It'll happen at a base that was key to countering the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and still plays a pretty big role today. And that's just scratching the surface. So let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories. We always say this news cycle is like drinking from a fire hose. It certainly is. A lot going on. An appeals court allowing the Trump administration to suspend or terminate billions of bucks in foreign aid. We should point out that money was appropriated by Congress, which constitutionally controls the purse strings. That's what appropriation is. The judges said the grant recipients didn't meet requirements for having that suspension blocked. The money includes nearly $4 billion for global health programs and more than $6 billion for HIV and AIDS programs. The president has said the money is wasteful and doesn't align with his foreign policy. To this story now, Harvard back in the news. They're nearing a settlement tonight with the Trump administration to get access to federal dollars again and end the investigations that have been ongoing. Harvard would pay $500 million. You'll remember this all started as an investigation into anti-Semitism on campus. And then the Trump administration slashed more than $2 billion and research funding and tried to block the school from hosting international students. Harvard sued, calling it retaliation. It's not clear tonight where the money from the settlement would go. Columbia paid $200 million to restore access to federal dollars earlier this year. And development of this controversial makeshift detention center is in the news tonight, and it's also at risk tonight. A judge is trying to decide if building Alligator Alcatraz, as it's called, over in the Florida Everglades, does that violate environmental law? We're trying to figure that out. You see, it's being built on sensitive wetlands. The Trump administration is using it to house detained immigrants, but it comes as people held there say they found worms in food, toilets that don't flush, and mosquito-infested areas. And the air conditioner, they say, shuts down abruptly, sometimes in the middle of the sweltering heat. And now to some strange headlines surrounding this man, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. You hear about this? There's a new report that has so many people shaking their heads. Throughout his career, and it's been a long career, he's referenced a couple known as the Baileys, and I'll use air quotes, the Baileys. He claims they represent people in the political center and have shaped his political strategy. But here's the thing. A report on HBO's Last Week Tonight says the couple doesn't even exist. No Baileys, but multiple references about how the Baileys would vote, what they think, what they want from government. But the allegations are that the Baileys are a figment of his political imagination. We did reach out, the Pulse did, to Senator Schumer's office to try to get comment. That was earlier this afternoon. We'll let you know when we hear back. Now to the latest in Texas redistricting. That battle does continue at this hour. Lawmakers there are still at a stalemate because Democrats, as you know, have fled the state. And one Democratic governor is taking his threats to redraw state maps in response to a whole new level. We're talking about California Governor Gavin Newsom. His press office posted a tweet basically trolling President Trump as they urged him to back down by using language you frequently see in Trump's social media posts. This is one that he posted last night. Donald Trump, the lowest polling president in recent history. This is your second to last warning. The next one is the last one. Stand down now or California will counterstrike legally to destroy your illegal, crooked maps in red states. Press conference coming, hosted by America's favorite governor, Gavin Newsom. Final warning next. You won't like it. Thank you for your attention to this matter, using a line that President Trump often uses in his Truth Social accounts. Think that's a one-off? Think again. They posted another one that said this: final warning, Donald Trump, maybe the most important warning in history. Stop cheating or California will redraw the maps. And guess who will announce it this week? Gavin Newsom, many say the most loved and handsome governor, and a very powerful team. Don't make us do it. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yet another one. And there's plenty more where that came from. So we're wondering what impact this messaging could have for voters. We talked with PR guru Matt Friedman to get his thoughts. Take a listen.
We're in an era now of something very different. You know, a lot of people in communication said when Trump took office the first time that he's going to change politics and change the presidency. And I think the question at that time is this going to be an aberration, or are things really going to be different now? And I think what we're seeing here in the second term is that in a lot of ways, things are different. And one of the ways they're different is communication. And there's now a very close blend between political and government communication and entertainment. And there's now an entertainment factor designed to attract attention. Clearly it's working, and anybody would agree that Democratic messaging fell flat last year. So they're probably going to go through some sort of process of experimentation to see what pops. And for now, what pops is a form of entertainment. Satire is what this feels like. And again, if it gets attention and makes an audience think twice, they're going to justify continuing to do it.
Well, the audience he's talking about, thank you, Matt, by the way, is really chiming in. I got to tell you, I posted this on social media. It just went wild. As we always say, the show is about you. So we wondered what you thought of Governor Newsom's messaging and the trolling of President Trump. I asked the question on social media. Many of you chimed in. Curtis, thank you for your tweet to us. Hey, if Trump can send tweets like it's a WWE promo, then yeah, Newsom can absolutely cut his own SmackDown speech. Fair is fair. Adam says, good job. When will Trump learn that America's not going to allow you to become a dictator? Matt says, God bless President Trump. Jeff Moore says it's about time a Dem has the guts to fight fire with fire. And Dale says it's fine. It's a free country, but Trump is the president. I don't follow a governor of a different state. Could care less what he's saying. We're turning back to the federal takeover of D.C. police right after the break. Two conservatives with two very different points of view weigh in on that. Tariffs and a lot more. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Joining us now to talk about the takeover of D.C. police, tariffs, and several other hot topics, including that tweet by Gavin Newsom. We're talking to Ethan Baker, the mayor of Troy, and live via Zoom, host of Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, and political commentator S.E. Cupp. And it is so good to see you both. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Thanks, Ruth. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Ruth.
Great to have you both here. S.E., we'll begin with you. Man, you've covered politics for many years here, and you've watched threats of this kind of thing happen before, where people say, we're going to take over the police department if they can't get their act together. Here we have it happening, at least for now. Your thoughts, your reflections on what we're seeing?
You know, I'm curious to see what DC residents think of militarizing their city. You know, that's not something I would want to see in my town or city. But I don't live in DC. I'm in DC a lot. I work in DC pretty often. It doesn't feel like a safe city. And a lot of friends and colleagues who work in DC tell me all the time how unsafe it feels. I had a friend who was mugged and beat up last year. So I know that DC residents are frustrated and angry at the crime levels. And I also just think they're angry that Democrats are telling them, you're safe, see the numbers prove it. That's not a great idea for any politician to tell voters they're wrong about how they feel. And I think Democrats saw that in 2024 when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were saying the economy is great. What do you mean? Or look at these crime numbers. You're safe in your big cities. Or look at these immigration numbers.
Sure.
There's no migrant crisis. It's not a politically good decision to tell voters they're wrong. But the flip side of that is this response by Trump going to be the right one? We'll have to wait and see what they think of that.
Yeah, don't try to logic people out of their feelings. And if people have a gut about how things are going, they live in that community, they're invested in it. Mayor Ethan Baker, so you're the mayor of the city, and all of a sudden crime, God forbid, goes out of control. And you have, even for that matter, the state come to you and the governor says to you, you know what, you can't handle this. Let us come in and handle it. What do you do as the mayor?
Yeah, I think as a mayor, I bristle with the thought of that, obviously, because it seems just wrong to have somebody come in and kind of usurp the authority. But if you look what Muriel Bowser has done as the mayor of D.C., she's actually, I know Muriel very well. She's a wonderful mayor. She's a great person. She's kind of taking it in stride. I know she's got strong feelings and she's got to represent her residents, and she's got a city council that's kind of all over the place on it. But just today, she's talking about how, you know, she's trying to work with the federal partners. She recognizes she's in a different position than a lot of other mayors of cities because of the strong federal presence in D.C.
But she changed her stance a bit, and I don't want to say completely changed, but it was just yesterday or the day before that she was like, this is crazy, you can't just take over a department, and then all of a sudden today she's like, hey, it'll help boost public safety. What do you think happened in between there?
I think she realized the value of having the additional reinforcements in there who are making extra arrests, who are working the streets and trying to keep crime down. Every mayor wants their city to be safe. We all do, and it's our -- priority is public safety. So maybe Mayor Bowser had a realization that this could actually help, and maybe she sees it as a short-term solution.
S.E. Cupp, take us through the process here, if you will, for a moment, about what happens with the president's wishes. Essentially, there's 28 days left that he can kind of exercise his control, and then something has to be decided by Congress. What's your guess on how things work and how things move forward with this?
Oh, badly. You know, just knowing Congress,
Right.
you know, Congress is going to play politics with this on both sides. You know, I think you'll see a lot of consternation over who will get credit or blame for whatever happens, however this goes. And I think there was some resistance to your question, Roop, earlier about Donald Trump doing anything, because, you know, I think there's some worry about who gets credit and whether, you know, resisting anything Trump does is the right thing to do for Democratic voters. There's just so much politics underlying these very real policy problems. And I think it's why so many voters are just really frustrated because they want solutions. You mentioned I'm covering this race in New York City where all eyes are on this mayor's race. They want solutions. They don't care, you know, if it's coming from a 33-year-old inexperienced Democratic socialist. He's identifying the correct problems. He's offering solutions. Donald Trump, on the other side, did the same thing in both of his winning elections. In 16 and 24, he identified the correct problems and offered solutions. You might not have liked them, but they were solutions. And I think when Congress inevitably plays politics with crime in D.C., everyone's going to lose.
I want to talk about something that some people will kind of be snarky with me about, saying, why do you have to keep bringing this up? But it is interesting. And from a political show here, it's fascinating to see Gavin Newsom use language that you would expect President Trump to use. Let's show you some of those tweets that we showed you earlier, and I want to get your take on it. Ethan, we'll begin with you as we see some of this. You know, he basically said, using the same language as President Trump, talking about, you know, how this is the final warning, and you should note this, and I'm the most handsome governor. These are words and terms that you hear from the president, not Gavin Newsom. What does this do to President Trump when he watches that? Do you think he's concerned? Do you think he even cares?
No, you know, I actually think he kind of respects it and likes it. As weird as that sounds, I think he thinks, oh, someone's here to play ball and we'll do some entertainment, because I think he ultimately really does like to entertain, obviously. But I think it's actually kind of a sad commentary on what's going on. And it takes away the Democrats' right to say all the things that Donald Trump is bad about if they start acting like Donald Trump. So to me, this Gavin Newsom tweet, I think it's funny as somebody who watches this stuff very closely. I also think it's sad that it's kind of lowering the standard of what a governor of the biggest state in the union should be about. And it really doesn't benefit the residents of California and the state. It benefits Gavin Newsom, who's running for president.
But if you're going to say that, it lowers the standards of the office of the White House, then, yes?
And it may very well have. Look, I worked for President Reagan in his post-presidential office. That's not how he communicated. He was very different. We know that. But also, we've accepted that about Trump at this point. He's been on the ballot for president 3 times. He's won twice. So there's no surprise that this is who Donald Trump is. If Gavin Newsom suddenly, in this iteration of his political career, in anticipation of a presidential run, starts trying to act like Trump to mimic him to get some attention for Gavin Newsom and his campaign finance, I think that's a mistake.
SC Cup, maybe a one-off, just a couple of tweets to put out there to kind of show a little bit of muscle?
We'll see. I agree with the mayor. I mean, it's funny. It's high-level trolling. I'm sure from where Donald Trump sits, it's game respects game. I don't think this is like the solution, though, for Democrats. And Democrats are really struggling right now to come up with a way to get their party back, to bring voters back to the party, to organize in time for the midterms, and to pitch ahead to 2028. They don't really know what to do. And so you're seeing these kind of stunts, social media stunts, stunts on the floor of the House, long speeches, sit-ins, protests. I think what voters want is an agenda. They want a competing agenda. I think if you voted for Trump and if you're not a rabid fan, you're like, well, you know, I liked some of the agenda, but I'd love some other options that maybe aren't as sort of far out there or in some cases unconstitutional. Democrats aren't really showing up with a competing agenda, a solution for all kinds of problems that competes with what Donald Trump is offering people. And as long as they're stuck in this loop of stunts and gimmicks, I don't think they're going to have the success that I know they want to have, and that, frankly, the country needs them to have two strong parties in the midterms.
I'm grateful that I have both of you here to talk about this. And by the way, when people send out tweets saying, why are you talking about this? Don't you have anything better to talk about? We do. And we're talking another 22 minutes worth of other things. But this was an important one that we thought we should at least bring to the attention. SC Cup, we're out of time. Thanks so much for your time. Battleground NYC. Look it up on the X and all the social medias, because you're doing a great job over there. And it's such an interesting place to watch. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rube. Good to see you.
Mayor Baker, great to see you as usual. Too, Thanks. Come back again. We're turning your bank account into the topic of conversation next. Interest rates, tariffs, the president's budget bill, the environment, how all of it will impact us. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. It is people, power, and politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. Joining us now to talk about how interest rates and several of the president's policies could impact all of us, wealth advisor Jeffrey Fratercangeli. And it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse. There's so much to get to, and we only have 5 short minutes, but I want to just talk about the impact that some of this stuff is having on folks. We'll begin with the budget bill. So many people have questions about how that'll impact us right away. And you hear a lot of the bad news about some of the Medicaid cuts and some other things, but there's some good news in there too. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, Roop, I think the first thing is you have clarity. If you know what you're facing relative to the laws and the taxation that your next move will cause, you can execute accordingly. Imagine going in blind and having to execute without knowing exactly where you stand. That is number one, clarity, so we can execute, number one. Number two, just having the ability to know where you can take deductions. 100% depreciation deductions and R&D deductions. It allows companies to take action and actually benefit from it on their bottom line. So more money is in the system that will allow economic activity and will also allow a number of benefits that will come from, in this local area as well, jobs, job creation, revenues, which will turn around and create more opportunities for this local area as well as the national area.
And we don't want to diminish the concerns that people have about Medicaid cuts, because certainly there is a huge concern about that and how it'll affect facilities, individuals, people. And so we've done so many shows on that. Go to our Pulse library on fox2detroit.com. But I want to highlight some of the other tax benefits that people are getting through this bill. I know Social Security for people above the age of 67, right?
Correct.
That's a thing. Child tax credits. What else are we talking about? And how do those help, obviously, people who are watching?
Well, if you have the essential ability to take action, spend money on the corporate level, and deduct it 100% against that year's taxes, therefore you can turn around and spend more towards the economy, the local economy, as well as your company's ultimate objectives. And I think ultimately that'll flow down to everyone, locally as well as in that business, as well as exterior to the state of Michigan. I think ultimately what we're getting is more money in the system, something we talk about quite a bit in my industry called M2 supply, the money supply. The amount of money that we have in the system today has hit a 2-year high as it relates to the amount of liquidity into the system. So the more money that's out there in corporations being allowed to be essentially utilized for business activity will create more revenue, more opportunity, more ultimate gains in corporate earnings, and that's local as well as national.
Let's talk a little bit about the tariffs, the concerns that people have. As you watch this economy churn along here, you're hearing, of course, the Fed basically say interest rates will remain unchanged. The president a bit frustrated by that. But then you have the tariffs, the chip tariffs and others. How do you see that affecting us here at home?
Well, automotive has been affected greater than most other industries. Right. So that is a definite factor. We are impacted greater than just about every sector out there, including technology, including industrials across the board. So we're feeling it here at home. That being said, we're starting to get more clarity. Once again, clarity is our friend. It's the same thing in the markets. When we know essentially where taxation is going to be, we know where interest rates are going to be, we understand exactly where we stand, not just for today, but for the future, we can act. And right now, we're starting to get more clarity on the tariff side. We've noticed that the markets have shifted away from that uncertainty with tariffs and allowed the market valuations to go a little bit higher. And so the fact that more clarity is there for tariffs, we still have issues. We know we have a 90-day extension for China. We know that we still have issues with India, of course, what's going on with India and Russia.
And the chips. And the chips are going to impact everything from your dishwasher to the car that you buy. And I know car dealers and car companies out there, perhaps they're clear on it, but maybe they're not as thrilled about it. Ford talking about posting, losses because of this. The concern that people have on the front lines outside of here, it's real.
There's no question. It's a factor. But there's so many other positive things happening. And the reality is tariffs are getting more and more clear every day. We see it happening. There's action being taken. Whether you like or you don't like what's happening, there's action. And I think ultimately we're seeing responses and behavior changes that I think are going to affect us more positively. And yes, we here at home are feeling it. But I do think the long term, I'm cautious, but yet I'm optimistic. We're going to have more benefits from what's transpiring right now. So I realize that there's some concern as it relates to tariffs and how it affects inflation, but we're looking at the data today. We saw first quarter earnings. We saw capital expenditures continuing to push forward. We're seeing more spending. We saw second quarter earnings come out recently. 80% of companies beat their expectations, both top and bottom line. Now, some of that is the direct correlation to guidance changing in the first quarter. But yet we saw that we overcame that. So now as we get more clarity with the tax bill, we get deregulation. Deregulation is a critical factor. We have the red tape that is essentially peeled back to allow execution for things that ultimately I think are going to be ultimately prospering for not only this local area, but for our country.
It is good to see you, Jeffrey. Thank you for your time here on the Pulse tonight, unpacking a piece and part of this that, of course, is so complicated, but it's almost a 1,000-page bill. So there's a lot in it, and we thank you for kind of gleaning some of your knowledge on that. That is the Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Roop Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.